Not everything that walked with you up to this point can cross over with you. Some things fulfilled their purpose, and insisting on carrying them now would be delay, not faithfulness. I declare that invisible agreements made in the past are being canceled now. Emotional agreements, mental agreements, spiritual agreements you didn't even realize you had made. I decree that every alliance built out of fear loses its validity. I decree that relationships sustained only by convenience dissolve without pain. I decree that cycles rooted in lack cannot survive the new territory. You are not being abandoned, you are being relieved. The weight that leaves is not loss. It is space being opened. I declare that you release responsibilities that were never yours. I declare that other people's expectations no longer dictate your decisions. I declare that the what if loses its power in the presence of conviction. Now, something shifts within you. Attachment weakens, clarity increases, guilt disappears. I decree that your spiritual awareness matures. You no longer force connections. You no longer insist on closed doors. You no longer try to rescue environments God has already decided to close. I declare that you recognize when it is time to leave without fighting. I declare that you honor the past without living in it. I declare that you walk lightly because you understand that what is truly yours walks with you. No right decision will ever cause you to lose what is legitimate. No healthy separation will leave you empty. I activate in you the ability to close cycles with peace. I activate in you the maturity to move forward without long explanations. I activate in you the firmness to say no without guilt. You are not drifting away. You are aligning. While you think nothing is happening, the invisible is fully at work. God works in silence when the result needs to be solid. I declare that hidden movements are happening in your favor right now. Conversations you didn't hear, decisions you were not part of, doors being prepared before you arrive. I decree that what seems stalled begins to gain momentum. I decree that slow processes enter a phase of acceleration. I decree that time compresses in your favor. You don't need to announce every step. Progress will speak for you. I declare that confirmations begin to appear without effort. Repeated signs, unexpected answers, situations aligning with uncommon precision. I decree that you are not distracted trying to anticipate what is still being built. I decree that your confidence stands firm even without immediate evidence. I decree that you learn to rest while God executes. Now something adjusts within you. Your anxiety decreases, your expectation matures, your faith stabilizes. I declare that you no longer confuse silence with absence. I declare that you recognize when heaven is at work. I declare that you do not sabotage the process by rushing the result. What is coming doesn't need noise to be real, it needs alignment. I decree that you move at the right time. I decree that you arrive at the exact place. I decree that you meet the right people at the right moment. Nothing is lost. Nothing is delayed. Nothing slips out of control. You are entering a phase where what happens on the outside will be a direct consequence of what has already been resolved within. There are moments when God doesn't change the scenario. He changes who you are within it. And when that happens, the environment is forced to respond. I declare that something deep is being repositioned within you right now. This is not excitement, it is awareness. I decree that you stop seeing yourself as someone who is waiting and begin to see yourself as someone who is crossing over. I declare that you are not late. You are being prepared to sustain what is coming. I decree that your spiritual identity adjusts to the level of the territory you are about to occupy. You do not arrive small where God sends you in greatness. You do not enter insecure where heaven has already validated you. Now, pay attention to what is happening within you. Your tolerance for what no longer makes sense is decreasing. Your selective patience is increasing. Your discernment is becoming sharper. I declare that you recognize when something no longer fits your season. I declare that you do not negotiate principles for comfort. I declare that you do not trade destiny for familiarity. You are not being isolated. You are being set apart with purpose. I decree that the mark of being chosen is activated upon you, not for pride, but for responsibility. I declare that you understand this truth. Those who carry a promise cannot live like those who walk without direction. And to seal this internal repositioning, write now in the comments, with awareness, not impulse. I accept the repositioning God is doing within me. Write as someone who agrees. Write as someone who aligns. Write as someone who does not want to return to the same place. There is a level where God no longer asks for noise. He asks for posture. Noise is for beginners. True authority walks in silence. I declare that you are now entering a level of visible spiritual maturity, visible in your decisions, visible in your boundaries, visible in what you no longer tolerate. I decree that you no longer react as you once did. You observe, you discern, you decide. I declare that you do not need to prove anything to anyone. The coherence of your life will be your answer. Now, something becomes established. Fewer explanations, more conviction. Fewer justifications, more direction. I decree that your authority grows without you raising your voice. I decree that your yes carries weight and your no closes cycles. I decree that you learn to move without overexposing yourself. You do not need to explain everything God is doing. The fruit will speak. I declare that you leave defensive mode behind. You are no longer threatened by opinions. You no longer shrink to fit into small environments. I decree that your presence changes atmospheres without effort. You enter and the environment adjusts. You arrive and the rhythm shifts. This is the level where God entrusts greater decisions. Because those who have learned to govern themselves are ready to govern territory. Not every change is comfortable, some are necessary. And those who discern this do not try to return to what has already lost its meaning. I declare that you are crossing this moment with spiritual clarity. You no longer walk on autopilot. You perceive signs, adjustments, interruptions, and subtle directions. I decree that old patterns begin to lose their power without a fight. What once pulled you no longer has the same weight. What once confused you is now identified with clarity. I declare that you no longer repeat cycles out of emotional attachment. You recognize when something has fulfilled its purpose and must come to an end. Now, something breaks. Draining habits, limiting thoughts, decisions that kept you small. I decree that you do not romanticize the past. You honor what you lived, but you choose what you build. I declare that your crossing is not disorganized. It is guided. Even when you do not understand everything, you sense that you are on the right path. That feeling is not confusion, it is alignment in progress. I decree that you do not rush ahead of time, nor delay out of fear. You walk at the right pace, not running, not paralyzed. And this is preparing you for something greater than you can imagine right now. When heaven begins to trust more, the demand increases, not to pressure you, but to position you. I declare that you are entering a level where small decisions carry great impact. That is why your spiritual sensitivity is deepening. I decree that you learn to listen before acting, to perceive before speaking, to discern before choosing. Now, something shifts within you. You choose better, you manage better, you expose yourself less. I declare that you understand this truth. Destiny is not just a promise, it is responsibility. And God does not entrust territory to those who cannot sustain posture. I decree that you receive the maturity to carry what you asked for in prayer. I decree that you do not sabotage yourself when doors begin to open. I decree that you remain firm when the transition tightens. You are not being tested to lose. You are being trained to govern. And if this word is helping you maintain clarity in this season of transition, subscribe to the channel. Not out of obligation, but because walking in this atmosphere with consistency strengthens those crossing decisive phases. Here, every video is not just content, it is alignment, it is direction, it is spiritual maturity. There are moments when God does not explain, He redirects. And those who insist on understanding everything before obeying end up standing still halfway through the journey. I declare that you are learning to trust the redirection. Even when the route changes without warning, your spirit recognizes the direction. You no longer waste time trying to understand the why of everything. You understand the what for. I decree that paths that once seemed right begin to close effortlessly. This is not loss, it is protection. And doors you never even considered begin to draw your attention. Not with noise, but with peace. I declare that you no longer force connections. You no longer try to sustain what heaven has already decided to remove. Now something adjusts within you. Less anxiety, less control, more discernment. You understand that not everything that ends is an attack. Some things end because they have fulfilled their purpose. I decree that you are no longer trapped trying to relive old seasons. You honor the past, but you do not live there. Heaven is reorganizing your route because the next territory requires a different posture, a different mindset, a higher level of consciousness. And you are ready for it, even if you cannot see everything yet. When God leads a true transition, he leaves signs. Not always external, often internal. I declare that you begin to notice subtle changes. What once attracted you loses its shine. What once frightened you loses its power. What once felt distant begins to make sense. These are signs that you no longer belong to the same place. I decree that your spiritual sensitivity increases. You recognize when insisting becomes disobedience, and when waiting becomes wisdom. Now, you no longer react the way you used to. You respond with awareness. I declare that heaven begins to confirm decisions with peace, even without applause, even without external validation. You understand that confirmation is not noise, it is alignment. I decree that you no longer confuse silence with abandonment. This silence is divine concentration. Something is being prepared behind the scenes. And while you cross over, God is arranging what will receive you on the other side. This phase is not confusing. It is sacred. And those who honor the crossing do not arrive immature at the destination. Many people think the promised land is an address, but in truth, it begins as an internal state. Before changing the scenery, God changes the axis. Before shifting the territory, he aligns the heart. I declare that you do not enter the new carrying the weight of the old. You do not cross over holding guilt that no longer belongs to you. Something within you has already begun to align. Your tolerance for chaos has decreased. Your patience with disrespect has ended. Your hunger for meaning has increased. This is not a crisis. It is spiritual maturity. I decree that you are no longer satisfied with emotional, spiritual, or financial crumbs. You understand that promise does not coexist with survival. Now you begin to notice. Environments that once felt normal now drain you. Conversations that once held you now sound empty. Cycles that once restrained you now close naturally. This is the sign of an internal shift. The promised land begins the moment you stop negotiating who you are to fit into places where you no longer belong. And you are not late. You are being prepared to sustain what is coming. Every promise requires expansion, not of effort, but of mindset. I declare that your vision is beginning to widen. You no longer think only about escaping the problem. You begin to think about governing the next level. God does not remove you from Egypt to place you in another, more comfortable Egypt. He leads you into a territory where your identity must be firm. I decree that you abandon the mindset of scarcity. Scarcity of time, scarcity of resources, scarcity of opportunities. You begin to understand that heaven does not release promise to those who still think like slaves. Now you learn to steward silence, waiting, and process, without murmuring, without comparison. I declare that you do not lose yourself along the way. You do not romanticize the past when the present demands forward movement. You understand that the crossing is the place where character is tested, obedience is refined, identity is strengthened, and those who pass through this do not arrive small at the destination. Heaven is teaching you how to sustain what you asked for in prayer, and when you arrive, it will not be a surprise. It will be confirmation. There is a moment in the transition when God does not add, he removes. And this confuses those who do not understand spiritual processes. I declare that you no longer interpret losses as failure. You begin to discern that certain exits were protection, not abandonment. When some people stepped away, it was not because you lost value. It was because access changed. You could not enter the promised land carrying relationships that would not withstand the next level. Not everyone who walked with you in the wilderness can accompany you into the territory of promise. I decree that you no longer feel guilty for necessary endings. You stop trying to maintain what God has already closed. Now you understand. Some doors closed to preserve your focus. Some conversations ended to protect your vision. Some environments became too small because you grew. This is not loneliness. It is divine reorganization. I declare that you become comfortable with selective silence. You learn to walk without needing to explain yourself to those who do not understand the process. And this is spiritual maturity. You are not being isolated. You are being repositioned. The wilderness does not end when the pain stops. It ends when identity matures. While you needed signs in order to obey, the process continued. While you negotiated principles so you wouldn't lose people, time stretched on. But something has changed. I declare that now you obey even without applause. You decide even without external validation. You understand that it is not the lack of resources that delays the promise. It is the lack of internal alignment. And now you are aligned. You no longer react impulsively. You no longer decide out of fear. You no longer move from the anxiety of having to prove something. You walk by conviction. This is a clear sign that the transition is advanced. And now I want you to actively participate in this movement, not just by listening. Write in the comments, "I accept the process and move forward into the promised land." Do not write it casually. Write it as a spiritual marker, as someone who understands that the wilderness no longer defines their path. Because when heaven recognizes awareness, the environment begins to respond. There comes a point in the transition when God no longer speaks only on the inside. He begins to confirm on the outside. Signs appear, patterns repeat, unlikely doors open naturally. Answers arrive before the question is even finished. I declare that you recognize the signs without becoming dependent on them. You understand that signs do not create faith. They confirm alignment. You begin to notice encounters that are not coincidence, opportunities that arrive at the exact right time, quiet protections that prevent future pain. This is heaven saying, "Continue. You are on the right path." I declare that you no longer ignore these signs, but you also do not idolize any of them. You learn to read the movement without losing your center. And at this level, something important happens. Heaven begins to trust you with more territory. You start carrying spiritual responsibility. Your choices carry weight. Your decisions begin to open or close entire cycles. That's why walking together becomes essential. If this content is confirming something you already felt deep inside, subscribe to the channel. Not out of habit, but out of alignment. Because certain levels are only sustained when you remain in environments that reinforce direction. Many people think the promised land is an address, but spiritually, it is a state of inner governance. It's not about where you arrive. It's about who you become when you arrive. I declare that you do not enter this new season insecure. You enter aware of what you carry. You no longer accept emotional crumbs. You no longer negotiate principles for convenience. You no longer shrink yourself to fit into old environments. You govern your own atmosphere. Where you arrive, the environment shifts. Where you speak, confusion loses strength. Where you decide, stagnation cannot remain. This is the promised land, not the absence of battles, but the authority to overcome without losing yourself. I declare that you sustain what you receive. You no longer lose ground through unpreparedness. You no longer retreat out of fear of the new. You understand that great promises require great posture, and that posture is already being formed within you. There is a shift in rhythm that does not come to rush. It comes to align. You begin to notice that some things start moving faster, while others are clearly slowed down. And this is not confusion. It is divine precision. I declare that you discern this rhythm. You do not force what needs time to mature, and you do not delay what needs to be executed. You begin to walk with refined spiritual sensitivity. You sense when it is time to advance, and when it is time to sustain. At this level, you no longer live by impulse. You live by direction. And that preserves what God is building. There are moments when heaven does not explain. It simply leads. And silence is not absence. It is maturity being formed. I declare that you do not become disorganized when God is silent. You do not fall into anxiety. You do not create shortcuts. You learn to trust without needing to understand everything. This is a level few reach because it requires spiritual security, and that security is already growing within you. You do not need noise to know you are moving forward. You recognize progress by internal alignment. When God moves you, not everyone is able to follow. And this is not rejection, it is strategic separation. I declare that you do not carry guilt for growing. You do not explain yourself to those who cannot understand the new season. You honor the past, but you are not bound to it. Some connections end naturally, others strengthen in unexpected ways. And you learn to discern who walks with you for a season and who walks with you for destiny. This brings lightness. This brings clarity. This brings peace. You do not enter this new level with an old mindset. I decree that your mind expands. You begin to think like someone who governs, not like someone who merely reacts. You plan differently. You decide differently. You respond differently. Problems that once paralyzed you are now resolved with authority. You understand that provision follows vision, that access follows responsibility, that favor follows alignment. And this changes everything. Before full manifestation, heaven produces awareness. You know where you are. You know what you carry. You know what you no longer accept. I declare that you do not enter this new season distracted. You enter attentive, present, aware. You understand that you are not merely passing through a phase. You are assuming a position. There is a point in transition where nothing external changes visibly, yet everything inside no longer functions the same way. You notice that old reactions no longer make sense. Words that once shook you now pass without finding space. Environments that once felt necessary begin to feel too small. This is not arrogance. This is internal repositioning. I declare that your spiritual structure is being reprogrammed. You are not just moving to another place. You are becoming a different person to sustain that place. There are decisions you can no longer postpone. Discomforts that can no longer be ignored. Convictions that become non-negotiable. This is heaven adjusting your boundaries. You no longer tolerate what drains you. You no longer adapt to what diminishes you. You no longer negotiate with what pulls you away from purpose. I decree that this reprogramming happens without guilt, without fear, and without retreat. You do not try to fit where you have already outgrown. You do not force yourself to remain where the cycle has ended. Transition teaches you to honor endings without needing to justify them. You learn that spiritual maturity is not explaining everything. It is obeying with clarity even when few understand. And at this level, you begin to walk more quietly, more focused, more precise. Because what is being built now is not meant to be displayed. It is meant to sustain what is coming. Nothing in your life is disconnected. Heaven does not work with loose pieces. It works with perfect connections, even when they appear delayed. I declare that you begin to see your story with a deeper level of understanding. Things that once looked like mistakes start revealing purpose. Delays begin to show protection. Detours begin to reveal deliverance. You understand now that you did not lose time, you were preserved. And now, everything that was preserved begins to align for forward movement. Heaven starts connecting dots you barely remembered anymore. People reappear with a new role. Opportunities return on a higher level. Old dreams resurface with the maturity required to become reality. I decree that your future begins to respond to your new positioning. Not through anxiety, not through excessive effort, but through alignment. You learn how to walk without running ahead and without falling behind. You sense when it is time to act and when it is time to sustain. And this places you at a spiritual advantage. While many move driven by desperation, you move guided by direction. While many try to force doors open, you recognize when doors open on their own. I declare that your life enters an intelligent flow from heaven. Nothing is random. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is late. Everything begins to cooperate. And when you realize this, anxiety loses its grip, fear loses its voice, and confidence becomes established. Because now you know, it is not you trying to get there, it is heaven leading you there. It's no longer about understanding everything. It's about sensing that something has already shifted within you. There is a different kind of silence happening now. Not emptiness, reorganization. When heaven decides to change a route, it first changes the internal axis. The way you think, the way you respond, the way you discern. And if you pay attention, you will notice you are no longer in the same emotional, spiritual, and mental place you were before. Something has been closed. Something has been unlocked. Something has been authorized. This transition does not ask for haste. It asks for presence. Because what comes next is not noise. It is positioning. And from here on, every word, every declaration, every decision will no longer be just inspiration. It will be activation. Take a deep breath. Because now we are entering a level where the invisible begins to respond. Eternal Father, at this moment I place myself under your authority and your divine order. Not as one who asks for permission, but as one who responds to a calling. May every invisible resistance be broken now. May every spiritual, emotional, and mental blockage lose its power in this instant. May every old restraint that was holding back progress, decisions, paths, and access be dissolved by your presence. I declare a breaking over repeated cycles, a breaking over delays that were never meant to remain, a breaking over confusion, fear, stagnation, and internal weariness. May everything that was held back in the spiritual realm receive an order of release. May what was blocked by invisible opposition be unlocked. May what was restrained beyond its appointed time return to its proper flow. I declare access. access to doors that would not open before, access to territories that once seemed unreachable, access to environments where decisions are made, where resources circulate, where purpose finds room to manifest. May the mind be realigned now. May limiting thoughts lose their authority. May vision be cleansed of every distortion that was preventing forward movement. May the spirit assume leadership once again. May intuition be activated with clarity. May discernment become sharp, precise, and stable. I declare that no contrary word holds power anymore, that no accusation from the past has a voice, that no structure of scarcity remains standing. May ideas, strategies, and solutions be released. May the right connections begin to draw near. May the right doors begin to respond. I declare that the atmosphere shifts now. The internal environment changes, and as a result, the external begins to reorganize. May favor find this life. May provision find this life. May direction find this life. May what seemed distant draw near. May what seemed impossible become accessible. May what seemed lost be restored with maturity and strength. I declare that the transition is completed, that the new season is established, that alignment is sealed. And from this moment on, may every step be firm, every decision be clear, every movement be guided. Nothing outside of purpose remains. Nothing outside of rightful will prospers. Nothing outside of what was written is permitted to govern. I bless this life with advancement, with stability, with clarity, with access, with peace that sustains great decisions, with courage to walk where fear once ruled. May the coming days bring signs. May the next steps bring confirmations. May the path reveal itself as it is walked. In the name of Jesus, the God who opens paths where there was no road. Amen. 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 And if this prayer spoke to you, if something was unlocked within you, if you felt clarity, direction, or peace rising right now, subscribe to the channel. Here you do not walk alone. Here every word is alignment, every video is activation, and every step is guided. May you be guarded. May you be directed. May you advance with firmness. And may everything that was released meet you at the appointed time.